Adam Silver says, candidly, he doesn't think super teams are a good thing. Mark Cuban disagrees, saying they become the villain. Just like when LeBron went to Miami, I loved that there was a villain. Sounds to me like you're sort of on that side.
Well, I guess I'm not on the side that this is ruining basketball. That all of a sudden this team now, that do we think they're going to set a new record? I mean, is we still got 82 games to play. Let's see, because we saw that LeBron, they all got together and this was supposed to be this super team. Now I get the talent level and what Golden State just did in the regular season. I understand that. But I'm less apt to say crown them already and say this is the greatest team of all time. Let's just walk through everybody. Because like I said, if they don't win 73 games, does that diminish them as, okay, well, it must not have been a super team then. But they could easily not win 73 games and then go on to win the championship. And that, of course, is the most important thing. I just don't fall into that category of, oh, my God, this all this parity we wanted in the league and now it's all gone. I don't buy that at all.
No, because they don't have that. There is a degree of competitive balance, but the reality is that if you're looking at teams you could project to win a championship, you were correct when you said there's probably only one fewer right now than there was last year. Unless, Mike, this team is just really that good. That's the one thing to be at least a little concerned about, is that they're so good they do actually make it boring. You know, like watching Golden State go after 73 last year was fun because they were chasing it. But if this team is now just so good, if they rampage through the playoffs, if there doesn't ever really feel like a level of competition, which I don't think is impossible.
But Steph Curry didn't play in 19 fourth quarters.
Right.
So if he doesn't play now, does he not have to play in 22 for it to be less dominant? They were dominant last year, and we couldn't get enough of it.
But how many times during the playoffs, which is the part of this that really matters?
The playoffs stunk last year.
Yeah, but
they were blowouts until
the games themselves stunk.
Yes.
But the storylines were pretty good. And one of them was Golden State's in trouble a bunch of times.
That's the first time a storyline became good. There was a lot of playoff games, and a lot of them stunk. The first time the storyline became good in the playoffs was when Golden State was down 3-1 to Oklahoma City.
Well,
even when Toronto took 2 from Cleveland, there wasn't one person that, and I know certainly on our show where we were like, oh, Cleveland's in trouble. We were just like, oh, Cleveland's going to wake up and end this thing. We legitimately thought Golden State was in trouble. That's the first time during the NBA playoffs it got interesting as far as I'm concerned.
I don't totally agree. Let me remind you of a few things that happened. One, when Steph got hurt the first time, that became interesting because we weren't sure exactly what it was going to mean. It actually led to, 2, the Clippers are going to beat them. And then 3, Chris Paul broke his hand that very night.
Okay, so it never got interesting. It never, no series ever got interesting because of any storylines were there. I give you that, but a guy was hurt and it was over. So there was no more to the storyline. We moved on.
The other piece that I think has to be remembered in this, and I go back to something that I learned. As you know, I'm very, very bad at math, and I'm very, very bad at economics. But the one thing I remember from my college economics class was the principle of diminishing returns, the law of diminishing returns. Right. And the way they taught it to us was this. On the New York City subway system, they charge you a price. Let's say it's $1, and you have 10 million people use it in a given month. I don't know exactly. I'm just making up numbers. So that adds up to a certain amount of revenue. Well, now they figured out if we raise it a quarter, then 9 million people will ride it, but it'll still make us more money. If we raise it another $1, now only 8 million people will ride it, but it'll still raise more money. And then you reach a point where you are now charging too much for it to be more profitable. I do believe that point exists with the lack of superstars to go around. I get it. I get the idea that people want to see, in the finals, I want to see LeBron against Steph. But they still have to have a season. And people still have to have teams they want to go see besides those 2.
Can I ask you a question?
You're going to run out of players if they're all on 1 or 2 or 3 teams that you're interested in watching.
So everybody seems to have this hang-up that it was Golden State. What if he went to the Clippers? There's a few superstars on that team, isn't there?
There are.
And that was the team we talked about last year that could be there. How everybody said the problem they have is Durant went to the team that beat him. Okay, so now keep going with your thought process. So he goes to the Clippers. How is that helping the teams that didn't have a shot anyway? To have that, you need him to go to Utah or to Denver, which isn't going to happen, or nor should we expect that to happen, or he stay in Oklahoma City. But so I don't want that. That's what I don't want to hear. Yeah, he went on a team with some great players. What were his other choices? If he went to Miami, he'd play with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh. If he went to the Clippers, he'd play with Blake Griffin and Chris Paul and DeAndre Jordan. Well, I mean, he was talking about playing with other great players as well.
There are a couple of different ways to look at that. If he had gone to Miami, that would have probably added one team to the conversation of who could win it. If he had gone to Boston, that might have added another team to the conversation of who could win it. You don't have to go to a terrible team in order to not go to the most stacked team in the world. I agree with you. He wasn't going to Philadelphia, but he could have gone to Boston or someplace like that. Now, again, none of this is a criticism of Durant.
He can go where he wants.
He can go wherever he wants. That's a separate conversation from whether I think it's good for the league or bad for the league. I do remain concerned, and if I were the commissioner of the NBA, I would remain concerned about the law of diminishing returns, that eventually there were only going to be 3 or 4 teams that matter at all.
Last year there were only 4 or 5 teams that mattered, and get back to me if they win 75 games and roll through the playoffs. Then I'll say, okay, maybe we have a bit of a worry. But let's actually let them play this out a little bit before I go down that road.